Hello there. Chatbots and voice assistants are one of the most important tools in today's and especially in tomorrow's world. But who are the people that make them work? The conversation designers. My name is Eran Soroka, head of marketing operations for CoCoHub Conversational Components. Today we have a special guest from Austin, Texas, where everything is bigger. Eran Golembiewski, CEO and co-founder at Voxable Conversational and Voice Interface Designer. How are you, Lauren?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. First of all, how did you get into conversation design?
So my background is in UX, typical UX and UI design for web applications and mobile applications. And my partner in business and life, Matt Buck, at the time he's in engineering and software development. And at the time, before all of this voice really hit and really got big, we were just, playing around in our homes with our different home automation devices, turning on the TV and controlling the lights. And we got a hold of an Ubi smart speaker, which was the predecessor to the Echo. And we were able to program our own voice interactions in our home. And we just found it like really, really magical. It was so fun to enable our environment with these home automation devices. And then the Alexa Skills Kit came out, and we saw how, big companies would start to kind of really get behind this technology. And we quit our jobs and started Voxable because we wanted to make these devices and these interactions more and more. So we kind of got into it just by being hobbyists and turned it into a business.
Great. What parallels do you see between your previous occupation as said the UX design, product design, and conversation design?
I think there are a lot of parallels. I used a ton of my UX design and UI design background in conversational design. I really think that there's a lot that you can extract from those processes in typical UX design and software development. And I, had to learn all this new technology coming into conversational design, but, really the underlying process of understanding users and trying to create a piece of software that really benefits them is the same. And so, the affordances and the tools that you're working with and the things that you're using to build the software are different. And learning that, especially having an engineer, software developer next to me, made that much easier. But I was able to kind of take that underlying process, that underlying knowledge I already had, and apply it to a conversational design process, which is, similar to creating any other web or mobile application. It's just that the mode of input that users are interacting with is voice, and that changes a lot of things, but it doesn't really necessarily change the fact that you're still building a software application.
Okay. What is the project or bot or skill that you're most proud of?
I'm really proud of our work with South by Southwest and their intelligent assistant, Abby. It was a really big project with a lot of different data points, and the data that we were working with when you're thinking about a big tech and music conference is names of bands and names of places and venues. And all of those are can be linguistically similar, because a band name can be whatever the band wants it to be. Oftentimes there's names of people who are speakers, but those people are also attached to bands or other projects. So disambiguating all of the underlying entities or important data points in that system was a big challenge. And although the event didn't take place this year, and we're not sure when it will take place again, I'm really proud of the work that we've done over the past few years with them. And then aside from that kind of client work that we've done, I'm really proud of our Introduction to Conversational Design course. A lot of the work that we do with companies is teaching them how to implement these conversational design and development processes. And we kind of distilled that down and made it accessible to anyone who wants to get into this through an online course. So I'm really proud of that work because it was a lot, it was a lot more work than I think we anticipated, but we got it done, and it's out there.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's hard to miss that one of your passions is music. How can conversational AI help in the process of, for example, learning a new instrument?
Yeah, so I started learning banjo about a year ago. It was my very first instrument ever.
Really?
I love music and I love listening to it, but I never really felt like I had what it takes to learn music. It just wasn't something that I was around as a youngster. And my partner, Matt, is a musician. He's been a musician since he was very young, and he's constantly been trying to pull me into music because it's one of his passions. And it wasn't until he bought a banjo and I picked it up and I was like, I want to learn this. So I've been, taking online course lessons and watching lots of YouTube. It's kind of amazing all the resources that are out there today for anyone wanting to learn an instrument. I discovered something very important, which is you can learn music. It is not an innate talent. It is a skill that you can pick up. And even in your 30s, like me. And as I started learning music, and especially the banjo, I realized that there was so much opportunity for voice interaction in these different learning platforms, because at least in banjo, and I know in guitar, because I started picking up and learning electric guitar a little bit this past year, a lot of times you're learning chord shapes and you're trying to figure out the shape that your hands need to be in, and you forget, what fret you're supposed to be fretting, or what, string, what the exact position is. And I just keep thinking like, oh, I have an instrument in my hand. I don't want to have to like go pick up my phone that has the chord diagram on it. I want to just be able to ask my smart speaker, which is also sitting right in front of me. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity in music education to have this voice interaction, because it is something that I felt was really natural when I'm sitting there learning an instrument. And the Ultimate Guitar Tabs application does have some voice control built into the mobile app, but it's not quite like a learning experience. And so I just keep thinking of, and Matt and I keep, devising all these side projects, which of course, the best side projects on top of our regular job. But we really just want to try to make something that is for ourselves. Again, tinkering around, being excited about the things that we're engaging in, whether it be music or home automation. We're just kind of always interested in making our own environments voice enabled. And so music learning is just like the latest one that I'm really excited about, enabling a voice interaction around that, because I know it would help me a lot. So that's, really why I want to build it.
Yeah, starting with your own use case is probably the best, because you suddenly find that so many people are trying to achieve the same thing. Um, what is the most important thing for a voice assistant, in your opinion?
I think the most important step, and I've seen this in clients that we've worked for, other people we talk to, is really having solid user research. So user research is just that activity of understanding what your users want and need. But in voice interfaces, the reason that's especially important is because users can really say anything to a voice interface. They're given that kind of open slot to speak their time. And of course, we know that users will have certain goals and will express those goals in certain ways. And technology only has so many things that it can do, especially if you're building an application on top of an existing product. Like, you have an underlying API, it does certain things. But really understanding the way that your customers or your users will verbalize those problems and those goals, as well as all of the other ancillary questions they're going to have along the way. If they're in a music interaction, they may ask for a chord diagram, but they may also say, okay, what scale is that in? They may have other follow-on questions that you may not anticipate if you're just thinking about what your application can provide. So I think user research is extremely vital. And if companies don't invest in it up front, what they end up creating when they create their first version of their voice interface is a mechanism to gather that research. So they're essentially creating, their own experiment. And that can be kind of tough for both the company and their expectations on performance, as well as the users and their expectations about what they're supposed to be getting out of it. So I just always caution companies, like, if you're not going to find this out in the beginning, you're going to find it out along the way.
The
And
hard
that
way.
could be good. And that could be your strategy. But be aware of the fact that you do need to uncover truly what exact words and unique words your users will bring to your voice interface.
What's the funniest thing or most awkward thing, most surprising thing that happened to you during your current work?
I think always, and this happens when I'm really deep on a project and I have been testing it and going through and trying to make sure that all the different functionality is there. And what ends up happening is I am interacting with the bot and I get something that I don't expect or wasn't necessarily aware was going to happen. And I feel like, oh, did this thing form a mind of its own? It's kind of that uncanny valley of just, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. I'm the one who wrote it and built it. But I still fool myself in the midst of interacting with these chatbots, because you do kind of lose that sense that you're really interacting with like a kind of flat, stale piece of technology, because bots really and voice interfaces really feel alive. And so it even fools me when I'm in the midst of testing that I'm like, did we program that in, or where was that variation of response, because I wasn't expecting it, and inevitably it is there somewhere, and it wasn't the bot having a mind of its own. But it does happen to me frequently when I'm in the midst of interacting with the bots that I've built, and it's funny, and seeing that with users as well, kind of is like we're all creating this very alive technology, which has great power and great responsibility attached to it, in order to not exploit that type of connection that I find myself in and users find themselves in. But it does happen to me, and I'm always surprised.
Okay. What advice or tips, Lauren, would you give to aspiring conversation designers who watch us now?
Yeah, so I would say to any aspiring conversational designer that, if they have roots in kind of typical web design or mobile app design, start there as your foundation. Don't try to undo everything you've learned. And that can provide a really strong foundation. Like I said, user research is really important. Understanding your users and forming those use cases in a way that makes sense to the developers and to the rest of the team is really important. And applying a design process, really strongly considering the way that the interactions will play out inside of the voice or chat interface is, to me, really maps along a typical design process. If you don't come from a design background, that's okay. I would say start to understand and learn as much as you can about the existing technology. So a lot of the platforms like Alexa or Google Assistant have documentation that tells you what those platforms can do and can't do. And while that documentation is really extensive and you can kind of get lost in it, a lot of them have, created design focused, areas of their documents that help designers specifically understand that technology. And then if you can work with or become friends with or marry a developer in the space, and that, that close collaboration and relationship with a developer who can help to, kind of level set you on what is possible, and not only just what is possible, but how easy it is to achieve, I think is really important. And then I think if you don't have a developer, if you don't have that kind of connection to someone who's building, you can go out and use tools that are out on the market to help you understand what is available on those platforms. So VoiceFlow has a really good integration with Alexa, and a lot of the tools inside of VoiceFlow are oriented around creating an Alexa skill. Bot Society has a lot of tools similarly, and I think they're a little bit more geared towards Google Assistant. But those tools can help you create prototypes and start to work with the underlying technology, and gives you kind of the GUI interface over top of all of the things that Alexa or Google can do. And that just trying to get your feet wet, trying to get in there and play around and create something. And then, like I do, I would say to everyone, try to find those use cases that really speak to you, that you really want to see happen in a voice interface, even if it's as simple as controlling some device that you have. Really start to try to make something like that work, because it's not until you apply something that seems kind of simple, like it's one command, but then you realize, oh, well, what if I say this, or what if my internet connection is poor, or what if that device doesn't respond? What are all those different situations that can happen even on one interaction? And really breaking that down and getting something to work and then showing it to other people will really like exhibit, you know, kind of all of the nuance that is within a conversational interaction. And so, you know, my advice is generally like, keep, you know, if you have underlying knowledge, use that as your foundation. If you don't, go out there and try to get it and try to understand the technology as best you can, and what is possible and what will work as far as a voice interaction.
Okay, talking about marrying a developer, what more can you tell us about the Voxable, you and Matthew's company?
Yeah, so Voxable is a conversational design and development agency. We help companies build their conversational interfaces, chatbot voice interfaces. We also do a lot of workshops, teaching companies kind of an underlying process for conversational design and development. So whether they have a design team and a development team, or they have writers, copywriters in a development team, or whether it's just a development team, we help them understand, here are the things that you need to have in place, the documentation, here's how to create a natural language understanding model, which is probably one of the core pieces of technology that is the most difficult for teams to assess and understand as they add conversational design and development to their wheelhouse. And then, like I said, we built an online course for anyone to kind of learn those same skills that we teach internally to companies, but to do it self-paced and as like a solo learner. And we're working on some really exciting things as well. Voxable is working on a tool, a conversational design tool. And so we think that there's a big gap in the marketplace for designers to have a tool that supports the design process, the conversational design process specifically. So we're creating like the Figma for conversational design. And we'll be talking more and more about that this fall and winter. But that's something that I'm really excited about, because again, it's something that I find that there's a huge gap. For me, I don't really have any tool that helps me write sample scripts and build conversation flows other than kind of smart whiteboards. And so kind of going beyond the whiteboard and the Google Docs and getting to something that really aids a designer in the conversational design process. Because I think tooling is a really important piece of the puzzle for any designer, and especially developers, and having a tool that designers can actually use to support their process that is focused on the exploration of a conversational design, is unencumbered by implementation. So it's agnostic of any platform. That's what we're building with, and it's called Voxable Studio. So we'll be talking about it more and more as the year goes on.
We also have something like that, but it sounds amazing. So Lauren Golembiewski, CEO and co-founder of Voxable, thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. And for everybody watching, don't forget to check out our hub at CoCoHub.ai, the place to build, expand, improve, and test your conversational components and bots, even voice bots. Take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.